Hey, folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. Happy Friday. Not a very happy Friday for Hezbollah, which is being pounded, maybe as we speak, but certainly earlier today, pounded by the Israeli Air Force in Lebanon for sure, and probably in Syria as well. Hezbollah was the main target of some pretty serious IDF or Israeli Air Force, IAF, I should say, airstrikes today. Folks, we got to break this down. A lot happening, needless to say, as we close out the week and head into the weekend. And will it be a very active weekend once again? Look, it's been a long, hot summer, number one. Long, hot summer. It's been a long week, as you can tell, number one. Number two, it seems that practically every weekend something happens in the world's most chaotic and volatile region, the Middle East. And what we do here on the channel is break down from a unapologetically biblical perspective why it matters to you, no matter where you live. So before we get started, hey, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. We're close now to 1 million subscribers for such a time as this. And that's our goal by the end of the year. We'd love to reach 1 million, not for our glory, but God gets all the glory. And we're trying to bring a message of truth in times where truth is at a premium, needless to say, where good is called evil and evil is called good. The prophet Isaiah described these times we're living in right now very accurately. So we'd love if you can be here with us every day as watchmen and women on the wall, as we're watching a few things. And yesterday we broke down basically the 4 reasons why I believe the Iranian regime has delayed its attack, its promised attack. They're breathing threats, right? Since Haniyeh was taken out, the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, since Fuad Shukr was taken out the day before that. Israel closed out July and began August with a flourish. And now this entire month, the Iranian regime has been breathing threats. Before we get into the major events in the north today, quick reminder for those 4 reasons, because a lot of people are asking me, or about those 4 reasons, I should say, because a lot of people are asking me, hey, what gives? Is Iran attacking or not? And folks, I'm coming to you around 4 or 5 p.m. Eastern time in the United States. And I can tell you that by the time you watch this, Iran, God forbid, may be striking in tandem with Hezbollah and with the rest of its ring of fire. We don't know. Here's what we do know. In my view, the 4 reasons that the attack has been delayed. Number one, psychological warfare. The Iranian regime is playing head games, and Iranian officials have said over the past few weeks, look, you're not going to know when, where, how, but we're going to do it. We're going to hit you. And apparently today, reportedly, an Iranian official told his British and French counterparts once again, and they've been reiterating this since the death of Haniyeh, that they have a right to strike Israel in what they see as a righteous response to the death of their terror comrade in arms, Ismail Haniyeh, right under their noses in Tehran. So number one, head game, psychological warfare, keeping the Israeli public on pins and needles. Certainly, there's been this feeling of kind of dread over the past 3 weeks plus. When's this attack going to come? We know it's going to come. So there's that. Secondly, have they been deterred? It's another potential reason. Look, and what do I mean by that? Well, the Biden administration, they're not one to deter, but they have passed on to Iran through back channels that, look, if you strike Israel this time, Israel is going to unleash hell upon your heads, meaning the Iranian economy would be in tatters because Israel, as our good friend Yair Pinto of TBN Israel, you can check him out at TBN Israel, by the way, here on YouTube. But your good friend Yair Pinto, your good friend and my good friend Yair Pinto told me last week here on the newscast, look, if and when Iran launches, he said, Erick, my sources, meaning his sources, and look, Yair was an IDF spokesman, so he's obviously has impeccable sources in Israel and on the ground. He said, my sources are telling me that the moment Iran pushes the trigger and launches a missile, the IDF is going to pounce. The Israeli Air Force is going to pounce, and they're going to strike right away. And it's going to be not very pleasant for the Iranian regime because this time around, Israel will strike sensitive targets. And the Iranian regime knows. Masoud Pezeshkian, the new president, is reportedly having an internal debate with the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. There's a debate within the Iranian regime right now, another reason for the delay, about, okay, how should we strike? because Pezeshkian is saying, if we repeat April 13th, that unprecedented attack, the first time ever where Iran struck Israel directly from Iranian soil, over 300 projectiles, 99% of which were intercepted. Pezeshkian says, look, what if we launch a bunch of missiles and drones at Israel again from Iranian soil, and they're all intercepted again? Not only that, this time, Israel responds with a massive crushing response that puts the very existence of the Iranian regime in jeopardy. Who knows? Maybe Israel even strikes the Iranian nuclear facilities. He's saying, is it worth it? And Pezeshkian, who, by the way, is also a very evil man, but I'm just giving you his viewpoint. He's probably actually right in this with the IRGC. If you're a regime member in Iran, he says, look, why don't we just do what we've always done before April 13th, and let's just strike Israeli interest abroad, embassies, consulates, community centers, Jewish targets, etc. It's all bad, but the striking abroad preserves the regime, and Israel's response is very likely not to be massive. Now, it should have been stronger, needless to say, on April 13th, but the Biden administration tied Israel's hands from any kind of meaningful deterrent type response. And now we have a situation where Iran's emboldened to try it again, perhaps. But right now they're nervous. They're nervous about the potential that Israel this time is going to really mean business with its response. And secondly, although I don't believe there's any teeth behind this, the Biden administration has sent at least 9 warships to the region, patrolling the waters of the Middle East right now in the shadow of Iran. Not to mention submarine, aircraft carrier, all there. Now, I think that they are more, again, for defensive purposes, which is a good thing in that they're going to help Israel shoot down any incoming projectiles. That's a good thing. And it was good on April 13th with that miraculous show of air defense. I believe God's hand was in it, where the U.S., yes, did help Israel, as did Jordan, as did Britain, and perhaps Saudi Arabia. We haven't got any clear answer on that, but they may have as well. So that's a good thing. But the message the Biden administration sent then and is sending now is that, look, don't you dare strike preemptively. If you strike Israel, if you strike the bad guys preemptively, then we won't back you up in defending against their onslaught. So Israel is sitting and waiting to be attacked. That's essentially where we're at because of Western, in specific, U.S. pressure. But all of this is making Iran think twice. The U.S. presence in the region, which again, is it a presence where the U.S. would go on the offensive? I find that unlikely, but if they're backed against the wall and Iran leaves no choice, perhaps. So Iran's been effectively debating about that, and also clearly, wow, Israel has proven they can hit us anywhere, any place, at any time. What would the Israeli response to our, is it worth it, to our barrage be? Is it, okay, we fire 1,000 missiles and drones. Most of them are shot, others fall in empty fields. And what do we get for that? Israel unleashes hell on us and possibly topples the regime by striking sensitive sites. So they're weighing this, not surprisingly. Third reason, they're waiting to see what becomes of the Gaza ceasefire. Look, Hamas has said no, no, and then no again at every turn. Yahya Sinwar, I heard some reports this week that he wants guarantees that he won't be killed. So we shall see, because Israel has clearly committed to taking out everyone behind October 7th. And Sinwar, who's Hamas's overall leader and their Gaza kingpin, certainly was the architect of October 7th and the massacre. And isn't it hard to believe, folks, that October 7th was nearly 1 year ago? I cannot believe it. I remember the events of that day. Talk about a day. 6:30 a.m. My phone is blowing up. I drive my daughter to soccer practice, and my phone, I'm like, what is going on? Everyone from Israel contacting me. By 7 a.m., I had a clear picture of what was happening, and not as clear as it became as the day went on. And I had to go to a wedding that day, believe it or not. Oh gosh, it was not easy. And then, hey, I was on a plane, waking up 3 a.m. and flying down to Dallas to do live coverage here at the TBN studios. I was still living in the Philadelphia area at the time back in October. But I say all that to say it's a day I'll never forget. And it was horrible on many levels. I have so many dear friends, as you might imagine, who live in Israel. I'm in Israel several times a year, and some of my best friends in the world live in Israel, and it's my second home, Jerusalem in particular. So it's hard to believe the events of that day were nearly a year ago. And yet the war to crush Hamas continues. And Hamas, according to the IDF just this week, according to Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, Hamas has been defeated in Rafah. And that's big. And I'm thinking about the Philadelphia corridor between Israel and Egypt, which Hamas has used as the main transit point, smuggling in weapons and other contraband to keep its terror operation going. And Israel in these Gaza ceasefire talks, there's some red lines. One red line has been, look, we are keeping a presence at the Philadelphia corridor, because if we don't, Hamas will regroup and rearm themselves through the tunnels there and through that corridor, through that Egyptian border. So we shall see. Hamas has not been too keen on that, needless to say. Sinwar is making outlandish demands. The United States, no surprise, is pressuring Israel incessantly to make the kind of concessions that would never ask Hamas to make. It's always been that way, though, in these talks about a so-called two-state solution. And even now in these ceasefire talks, which are a separate thing, it's always been Israel, you must give this up, give that up, and then give this up, and not say a word about it and don't complain. Palestinians, crickets chirping, nothing required of them. That's always how it's been. The onus and the pressure has always, always, always unfairly and insanely been placed on the force for good in this conversation, and that's Israel. And we have it again in these ceasefire talks. Bibi Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, has stood strong. He hasn't caved to the pressure, but it's relentless pressure. And for the Biden administration, man, oh man, do they want this war to end? They want the war in Gaza to end, number one. And number two, they're petrified of a broader regional war, especially with Hezbollah in the north and Lebanon and with Iran, because, folks, they've got an election to win in November. Remember? Kamala and Tim Walz, fundamentally unserious people. But they've got an election to win, and they can't be bothered with like national security crises and foreign policy. That's a distraction right now from what they call their campaign of joy. That's their new slogan. They're joyful. It's joyful to mutilate little kids and change their gender and kill babies in the 9th month. That's joyful, apparently. But that's where we're at with that party. And they completed their convention last night, and they want to focus on fundamentally transforming America. They don't want to be distracted by foreign policy crises. Because if something happens that requires them to show, I don't know, leadership, they're going to fail that test. So between now and November, they want peace and quiet in the Middle East. Well, good luck in the world's most volatile region. But needless to say, that gives you some of the thinking behind them trying to get Israel to climb down and capitulate at every turn. But we'll see what happens with the ceasefire, folks, because, look, you have to think on one hand that Hezbollah would actually like to see it. And I talked about this last night on my nightly show, Stakelbeck Tonight. Hey, if you love the YouTube channel, you love our nightly broadcast show, airing every night, Monday through Friday on TBN, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're loving doing it. Busy, but busy in the best way. Loving doing it every night, nightly. All the bells and whistles you don't have on a YouTube channel on a live stream, you've got it on the TV show. Beautiful set, studio, footage, B-roll, interviews, all that good stuff. But you're not here for the bells and whistles. You're here for the content at the end of the day. But we'd love you to check out the nightly broadcast show, Monday through Friday, again, on TBN, 7:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. Eastern. It's called Stakelbeck Tonight. We just launched in March, and we'd love your support. We love your viewership with the show. But I discussed that Hezbollah would like a ceasefire. And you might say, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Hezbollah on October 8th unilaterally began bombing Israel and hasn't stopped. And as we'll discuss in a minute, you see the title of today's newscast. They're intensifying those attacks, but they're also feeling the pinch and they're feeling the response, the consequences for their actions. And that is why, look, They've backed themselves against the wall, as has Iran. Hezbollah has vowed that until there's a ceasefire, they're going to defend their brothers in Gaza and continue to attack Israel. The problem with that is Israel has struck back and struck back at Hezbollah very forcefully, to the tune of eliminating several top Hezbollah commanders and hundreds of Hezbollah jihadists. Not only that, putting a dent in Hezbollah's military infrastructure. Its elite Radwan forces have felt the pinch, and missile launchers and all the rest. So Hezbollah is paying a pretty heavy price for their continued insistence on keeping their oath that they wouldn't stop striking Israel until a Gaza ceasefire was reached. So they'd like a breather right now. And Iran would too. A ceasefire would allow them to regroup, lick their wounds for a few months perhaps, re-bolster their forces, regenerate, and fight another day. And Iran as well. And Iran has painted itself into a wall because, look, they vowed to respond to the death of Haniyeh, and they still haven't. And I believe they will, folks, eventually. God forbid, I'm sad to say. But for them, it's a safe face-saving measure at this point. They got to do something. I don't know what it'll be. I don't know who's going to win that internal debate between Pezeshkian, the Iranian president that I discussed a few minutes ago, and Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the IRGC. Which way they'll go, I don't know. But eventually they'll have to do something. They backed themselves into a corner. Number one, because now they set this precedent on April 13th of, hey, we're going to strike directly from Iranian soil now, not just through proxy. They used to have what I call implausible deniability. They'd always act through proxy, Hezbollah, Hamas, etc. The Houthis, Islamic Jihad, the militias in Syria and Iraq. Well, now they've thrown their own hats in the ring, and they're striking directly. And Israel's saying, instead of striking back against the proxies, let's strike back at the source, the head of the snake. Let's strike back directly against Iran. And that's the can of worms that the regime opened on April 13th. So fasten your seatbelts. Fourth reason, by the way, before we break down the Hezbollah news and how at least 7 Hezbollah terror operatives eliminated earlier today by the IDF. Fourth reason, and this one, folks, is the most important and most compelling. Has the promised Iranian attack against Israel been delayed because of prayer? My good friend Joel Rosenberg, at Joel Rosenberg TBN is his YouTube channel. He's host of the Rosenberg Report and editor-in-chief of All Israel News, a great site. And you've seen him here on the newscast. Just a few weeks ago, we had Joel on, I believe. Great analyst from a Christian perspective, from a biblical perspective. And he wrote, perhaps prayer is working here. And the prayers of Christians and Jews around the world, for God essentially to stay the enemy's hand, perhaps it's working. So keep praying. So I thought that was some very interesting insights from Joel as well, because prayer does work. And in the very least, this delay is also perhaps helpful for Israel to prepare and gather intelligence. So keep praying, because prayer does work. And Joel gave scriptural context and examples where God did stay the hand of Israel's enemies. So it's interesting. And look, I'm not saying that that's going to happen here ultimately, but very interesting. As a follower of Jesus who knows firsthand that prayer works, I considered what Joel said very serious and took it very seriously. So continue to pray. Continue to pray here. And the thing is, we're mandated to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And that, by extension, means the entire land of Israel. Prayer works. When people say, well, I'll pray for you, I think some people almost think that's a cliche, or it's trite. Oh, he'll pray for me. Great. All right. No, just committed, focused, steady prayer works. I've seen it time after time in my life. And in the most crucial moments, and we just had one on set today. We had some major technical difficulties when we were recording Stakelbeck tonight's episode, actually. You won't see it on camera tonight if you watch the show on TBN at 7:30 Eastern, 10:30 Eastern. But there were some technical issues with a satellite interview, a remote interview we were doing, and we stopped and prayed. And a lot of times in those hectic moments, it's hard to remember that. Man, let's hold on. Everyone, take a deep breath. Let's pray. Let's seek God on this. But we did, and I'll tell you, those technical difficulties were no more. So interesting. Honor God, and he will honor you. Always acknowledge the Lord in all your ways. Acknowledge him. He will make your path straight. I think that goes for individuals like you and I, and that goes for governments. And we need leaders in the West right now who are seeking the face of the Lord, seeking the wise counsel of God Almighty. And Israel needs that too, that kind of leadership. Because, folks, dark times, not times for you to be discouraged and hide under your desk or hide under your table as you're watching, but times for you and I to shine light in the darkness for such a time as this. So be encouraged. Be encouraged in knowing that, hey, God put you on this earth during this particular time in history for a reason. You are not here by coincidence, although you say, gosh, why couldn't I have lived in a different generation or a different era when it wasn't so crazy and terrible and the world's going insane? Agreed, the world has gone mad. But this is all prophetic. And we knew that the latter days would not be easy. And Jesus never said, until I come back, you just sit there on the couch, eat some Doritos and wait for me, and I'll be there in about 5 minutes. No. He told us to go and make disciples of all nations. Be proactive. Folks, I implore you right now, if it's just prayer, just being an intercessor, get in where you fit in and find and pray about and seek that divine role, your destiny that God has for you in these upside down times in which we are living. Hey, God is looking for a few good men and women in these times. So let's answer the call. Okay. I encourage you, by the way, to check Joel's piece out at allisraelnews.com. Very good. Let's talk Hezbollah, and let's talk what went down today. Here you go, from the Times of Israel. At least, just looking down at my phone, reading this for you, at least 7 Hezbollah members were killed Friday in separate Israeli airstrikes on southern Lebanon as the Iran-backed terror organization launched over 100 projectiles at northern Israel throughout today, Friday, August 23rd. It's a lot of projectiles. 100 in one day. The strikes by Israel today included the targeting of a Hezbollah cell preparing to shoot rockets at northern Israel. And there were really, apparently, several different sites in Lebanon that the IDF struck today. And here's some direct information from the IDF. One of the airstrikes targeted Mohammed Najam, a prominent member of Hezbollah's rocket and missile unit in southern Lebanon. And his nephew was also killed. And we had another member of Hezbollah's rocket and missile unit killed as well by an IDF drone. So these were some high-value targets. And this is the kicker here. And by the way, according to the Times of Israel, there have been some 427 Hezbollah members killed since October 8th, when, again, Hezbollah began unilaterally launching rockets and drones at Israel and missiles at Israel. 427, I've been told that number is probably a little low even, that there's been more Hezbollah jihadis killed by Israel in that 10-month span, 10 month plus now. But Hezbollah, and this is always the kicker here, released statements today announcing that 7 members were killed. And by the way, that's a lot for Hezbollah. I mean, 7 killed, and that's kind of a big deal. And Hezbollah launched 100 rockets throughout the day. They've launched several hundred throughout this whole week, by the way. If you add it all up, the totals this week, it's intensified. And the IDF's response, as you can see by what I'm reporting to you, is also intensified. But 7 members will, I'm sure, bring a pretty significant Hezbollah response. It's a tit-for-tat thing, but the tit-for-tat is really growing now into really uncharted waters in a lot of ways. And let me just say that 100 rockets fired by Hezbollah in one day, folks, if Israel was not preoccupied in Gaza right now, this would have never happened. Hezbollah would have been dealt with on October 8th. And I think Israel made a mistake. I don't have all the intel. Obviously, I'm not a military strategist. I don't live in Israel. I'm not in the room. But when these decisions are made, but man, oh man, Israel, some in the Israeli government wanted to strike Hezbollah in the early days, right after October 7th. And Israel passed on doing that. No doubt, significant U.S. pressure, once again, factored into that. But I don't know how long Israel can hold off. And by the way, at this point, the members, Hezbollah released a statement saying those 7 members today were killed, quote, on the road to Jerusalem. Now, every time Hezbollah members are killed on the road to Jerusalem, or are killed, Hezbollah says it was on the road to Jerusalem. And that should tell you something from a prophetic perspective. Jerusalem is an absolute obsession for the jihadists of both the Shia and Sunni variety. Hezbollah and Iran, of course, of the Shia variety. But Jerusalem is really one of their ultimate prizes. And this is not a surprise. Read Zechariah 12. Just grab your Bible, pull it up on your phone, where God says a day is coming when Jerusalem will become like a burdensome stone. Everyone will covet it. Every nation, the entire world will covet Jerusalem. And yet anyone who comes against it will be cut to pieces. So we see Jerusalem becoming, God called it a cup of trembling for all the nations. We see it now. Folks, keep your focus and your eyes fixed more and more on Jerusalem in the days to come, because the battle over Jerusalem will intensify. And when Jesus returns, the great king, he's returning to the city of the great king, and that is Jerusalem. It's not Washington, D.C., Berlin, New York City, London. No, Yeshua, Jesus, is returning to Jerusalem. So call me crazy. That city, the ancient and ancestral capital of Israel, is kind of a big deal in God's economy and his prophetic plan. So it's no surprise that Hezbollah desires Jerusalem. And we also had today Hezbollah launching projectiles at Mount Meron, about 5 miles from the Lebanon border, where we have an Israeli military base. So, folks, that's a big target from Hezbollah. We had rockets fall in Sfat, the city of Sfat. So, northern Israel, needless to say, it's a war zone. And you literally have anyone. It's essentially a ghost town. Hey, look, folks, I was there in February of this year. It was a ghost town then. I can only imagine how emptied it is now. You've got at least 80,000, probably closer to 100,000 Israelis in the north evacuated from their homes still. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, but just for you to keep this in prayer, let me reiterate that when a nation is the size of the state of New Jersey in particular, like Israel, you cannot afford to have an entire region of your country shut down for almost 10 months. But that's what we have in the north. And not only in the north, southern Israel near the Gaza border also effectively shut down since October 7th. Almost a year now, 2 major regions in Israel have been basically shut down and not functioning. What does that do to your economy? And by the way, airlines are canceling flights into Israel for weeks on end. Tourism is a major part of the Israeli economy. So between that and having northern Israel a ghost town and parts of the south near the Gaza border still a ghost town, it's not good, needless to say, and that's an understatement, for this to persist for an extended period of time. Not good. A lot of action today in Lebanon, as you can see, and we await a possible Hezbollah response. But in the meantime, Syria, now we're talking prophecy a lot here, obviously on the channel, and I'm often asked about Isaiah 17, a prophecy where it is prophesied that Damascus will become a ruinous heap. It will cease to be a city. The world's oldest inhabited city, at least one of them, the capital of Syria, will cease to be a city. That's why I always find it interesting when there's action in Syria. And today, according to the Syrian regime, 7 civilians were wounded in Israeli airstrikes near the city of Homs. And we've got some additional reports that these airstrikes may have targeted, you guessed it, Hezbollah in Syria. I think, folks, it's all the run-up to the Great Northern War that we've talked a bunch about here on the channel. That Northern War will stretch across Lebanon and Syria. And I can tell you that if Israel goes all in on Hezbollah, and there's a good chance they will, and it looks like Hezbollah is on its deathbed, so to speak, then there's a very, very likely possibility that the Iranian regime gets involved directly. Because look, when we look at that Iranian ring of fire that surrounds Israel on all sides, Gaza was a crucial ring, and that's now gone. Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad are in their death throes. Gaza's been taken off the board, essentially, in terms of the ring of fire against Israel. Hamas and Islamic Jihad just don't have those kinds of significant capabilities anymore. They can fire some stray rockets, but not a stream of 1,000 rockets in a day like they used to. There were days past, in the not so distant past, like October 7th, when Iran could just tell Hamas, hey, stir things up, activate Gaza, and it was a thorn in Israel's side. Now that that's off the shelf, off the board, Iran absolutely positively cannot afford to lose Hezbollah. That would be a disaster for the entire ring of fire strategy. And listen, not only that, Iran is holding Hezbollah in reserve and has held him in reserve since 2006, the last Lebanon war between Israel and Hezbollah, because Iran needs Hezbollah to be its primary, if needed, strike force against Israel if Israel attacks Iran's nuclear weapons facilities. Iran's main response will be through Hezbollah. So I've said Hezbollah in the Iranian calculus is too big to fail. And we may have that day of reckoning sooner rather than later, because Israel could go all in and say, you know what, let's crush Hezbollah. In the very least, they could cripple Hezbollah and push Hezbollah back 18 miles beyond the Litani River in Lebanon. But it's coming. And we need to keep it on prayer, folks. And by the way, some big news today, RFK Jr. dropping out of the presidential race, endorsing Donald Trump. Just curious, what do you guys think of that? What are your thoughts? Does that impact the presidential race? Hey, November's around the corner. It looms large. What do you think? Never a dull moment these days, right? In everything we're covering. In the Middle East, here in the United States, Europe, London, Britain, France, around the world. I would say that it's a world on fire. Would you agree? A world on fire. I see prophetic chess pieces moving on the board left and right. And again, as a believer, I think you'd rather know than not know what's happening right now. We can't be ostriches and bury our heads in the sand. No, while we're here, we need to do as best we can and be about the Lord's business. So that's what I'm going to do. And I know we've got watchmen and women on the wall who are here with us who are going to do the same thing. And we're thankful for you. We appreciate you guys and gals. Have a great weekend. I'll be watching everything very closely. And I promise, if anything big breaks, we will come to you live. So be sure to subscribe to get all those notifications and alerts. And premium membership, by the way, just click the join button. It's absolutely free to subscribe to this channel. But if you want to be a premium member, where we have our podcast, the Stackscast, we've got some premium Q&A sessions that I do, fun stuff and cool stuff with our loyal viewers. You can check out premium membership as well. Have a great weekend. Until next time, God bless you, and never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here